I've always believed betrayal starts slow. Not like a car crash, but more like a leak behind the walls. Quiet, corrosive, invisible until the ceiling caves in. I used to laugh at people who said they just knew something was wrong. I thought intuition was just a retroactive excuse for missed signs. But that first night changed everything I believed. It was around 4:12 a.m. I remember the time because I glanced at the clock when I rolled over, half-dazed, thirsty, and annoyed that Ava hadn't come to bed yet. She had said she'd be working late, a quarterly close or some finance department thing I never really followed closely. She'd kissed me on the cheek around 10 p.m. and said, "Don't wait up. I'll probably crash on the couch." But the bed was cold, and I wasn't sleeping. Something gnawed at the edge of my thoughts, a kind of alertness that wouldn't let me relax. So I grabbed my phone off the nightstand, thinking maybe I'd distract myself for a bit, check the weather, scroll through a few reels, just something to settle the tension building in my chest. Instead, I tapped open the doorbell cam app. Pure impulse. No suspicion. Just curiosity. And there she was. It was like watching someone I didn't know. Ava stepped out of a black sedan with no markings, no Uber tag, no license plate I recognized. The streetlight cast a silver sheen on her bare legs. She was holding her heels in one hand and her clutch in the other. Her navy dress, the one she always said made her feel boardroom powerful, looked twisted, like it had been balled up and hastily pulled back on. The neckline sat lower than usual. One strap hung halfway off her shoulder, and over it a man's blazer, charcoal gray, clearly tailored, clearly expensive, and definitely not mine. She wasn't stumbling. She wasn't drunk. She was walking like she didn't care who saw her. No rush, no shame, just tired, maybe. That's when he stepped out after her. Brian Cole, her boss. I recognized him immediately, even in the grainy night vision glow. I'd seen him at the company Christmas party last year. He was the kind of guy who looked like he lived on private jets and espresso. Tall, slick, arrogant in that charming way that made him dangerous. Ava had said he was a visionary, which sounded like something pulled from a LinkedIn article. I didn't like him then. I hate him now. He stepped out of the car, glanced around like he owned the block, and casually placed his hand on her lower back. Not for balance. Not for comfort. For possession. Like he had the right. She didn't flinch. Instead, she leaned slightly into his touch, her posture softening as he adjusted the blazer on her shoulders. It was an int*mate gesture. Familiar. The kind of thing you do when it's not the first time. And then it happened, a flicker of movement that still replays in my mind on loop. As she turned toward the door, something small fell from her pocket and hit the ground with a soft clink. Cufflink. Gold. Engraved. He didn't notice. She didn't notice. But I did. I zoomed in as far as I could. The image was blurry, but the engraving looked like initials. B. Something. Couldn't be sure. I didn't need to be. I already knew. She slipped inside quietly, like she was trying not to wake a sleeping child. I heard the door open from upstairs, followed by soft footsteps in the kitchen. No attempt to come up to the bedroom. No checking if I was awake. The fridge door opened, then closed. Plastic rustled. Probably a water bottle. I waited. 5 minutes. 10. Then I went downstairs. She wasn't in the kitchen anymore, but the air still held the faint scent of her perfume. Jasmine and something deeper, woodier, with a musky undertone I didn't recognize. She'd told me before she only wore that scent for important nights. Her heels were by the back door, and on the table sat a leather briefcase I'd never seen before. Dark brown, worn at the edges, the kind of item that traveled with someone not just to the office but across cities. The initials were embossed near the handle in gold. B.H.C. Brian Harrison Cole. I didn't touch it. I just stared at it for a while, frozen. My mouth was dry, my hands numb. There was something so final about the way it sat there, like a trophy or a calling card. Like he wanted to be seen. I sat down across from it. My phone buzzed. It was a bank notification. A charge on our shared card. Boutique hotel. Downtown Portland. 1:22 a.m. Boutique. Not chain. Not budget. The kind with rain showers and turn-down service. The kind you don't check into at 1 in the morning unless you're planning to stay the night, and not alone. She still hadn't come upstairs. I went back to bed and lay perfectly still, eyes wide open, pretending to be asleep in case she finally came in. But she never did. When morning came, I walked into the kitchen like nothing had happened. She was making coffee, wearing a t-shirt of mine like it was normal. Her hair still held the faint impression of having been curled. Her makeup was gone, but her skin looked scrubbed too clean, like she'd taken extra care to remove every trace. I glanced at the table. The briefcase was gone. So were the heels. No blazer in sight. She smiled, small, like she wasn't sure how I'd slept. I didn't bring it up. Not yet. I said good morning. She said she had a headache. I nodded and poured a cup of coffee. But I noticed everything. Her phone had a new lock screen password. Longer. No more previews of texts. No notifications showing up. The focus mode icon sat in the top corner, glowing like a neon wall between us. Late night? I asked casually, taking a sip. She barely looked up. Yeah, we were at Brian's client dinner. It ran long. That explains the hotel charge? She paused for a split second, almost imperceptible. Oh, she said, not missing a beat. We got a block of rooms in case anyone needed to crash. I just charged mine to the card for reimbursement. I nodded. She was lying. Effortlessly. I looked down at her ankle. There was a red line where her shoe strap had been. She hadn't worn those heels in a while. Not for me, anyway. You wore the navy dress? I asked. Bit formal for a client dinner. Her eyes met mine, sharp. She smiled again, wider this time, but forced. You're overanalyzing again, right? Overanalyzing. She was barefoot at 4 a.m., stepping out of an unmarked car, wearing another man's jacket, with a lipstick mark on her neck and a cufflink falling from her pocket. But I was the one overreacting. That's how it began. Not with a confrontation, not with yelling or tears, just with a lie. Small on the surface, massive underneath. And me, standing in my own kitchen, holding a coffee cup and pretending nothing had shattered. But I knew. From that moment on, I knew. The jacket wasn't mine. And neither was she anymore. After that morning, nothing was ever quite the same again. Ava didn't know I'd seen the footage. I didn't tell her. I didn't ask about the cufflink. I didn't press her on the hotel charge or the briefcase or why her boss was the one dropping her off when she was supposedly at a company event with an entire team. I kept everything to myself. And I watched. The strange how silence sharpens your senses. You start noticing things you would have shrugged off before. Like how her phone used to chirp constantly with random notifications, group chats, news updates, Spotify recommendations. Then suddenly, nothing. It stayed face down on the table. No buzzing. No previews. No sound. Always locked. The first time I asked about it, she said she was using focus mode because she needed to concentrate at work. The second time, she rolled her eyes and said, God, you're being paranoid. It's just for mental health. The third time, she didn't answer at all. That was her new move, reframing my concern as control. My questions were overreactions. My observations were jealousy. Even when I came to her calmly, without accusation, she'd shut it down with a sigh and walk out of the room. Friday nights used to be our thing. Pizza from our favorite spot on Belmont, a movie, and staying up late talking about everything and nothing. Then she started coming home late on Fridays. Said Brian's team was working on a big internal restructure. Lots of moving pieces, she'd say while pulling off her earrings in the mirror, already half out of her work clothes. We're under a lot of pressure right now. But there were no late-night Slack messages. No new files opened on her laptop when I checked the recent documents tab out of quiet desperation. There were, however, charges to parking garages near downtown, even when her calendar showed no off-site meetings. Sometimes she'd say she went to the gym after work, but her sneakers didn't move from the front hall for 2 weeks straight. They stayed in their little spot, laces tied neatly, untouched. And then there was the jewelry. New earrings, a bracelet, even a necklace with a tiny emerald pendant. Ava always said she wasn't a jewelry person. For years, she rarely wore anything besides her wedding ring. Now suddenly there were delicate boxes tucked into her nightstand. She didn't mention where they came from, and I didn't ask. I was afraid of the answer. One night, she came home wearing a new ring. Thin, silver, with a tiny diamond nestled between two sapphires. I asked if she bought it herself. She smiled like she was waiting for me to take the bait. "No," she said, slipping it off and setting it on the counter. It was a gift. Brian's team hit a project milestone. He gave everyone something small. I nodded. "That's generous." She shrugged. "It's just a ring, not a proposal." There was that edge in her voice again, the one that made me feel stupid for noticing. And then there was the smell. It clung to her clothes like it belonged there. A heavy, musky cologne I didn't recognize. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anything I'd ever worn. And it wasn't a passing scent from a coworker brushing by her in a hallway. It was soaked into the fabric. Deep, persistent. When I finally asked, she laughed like I was accusing her of robbing a bank. "Are you smelling my clothes now? Seriously?" "No," I said. "I just noticed it. That's all." She stared at me for a moment, then went back to folding laundry. "Maybe you should get a hobby." A few days later, I checked her car. Not because I was trying to be invasive, I just needed something concrete. Something outside my own spiraling mind. The odometer showed an extra 80 miles since Monday. But her work was only 6 miles away. Her calendar was clear. No out-of-office appointments. No family visits. No errands she'd mentioned. I opened the trunk. Nothing unusual. Then I checked the glove compartment. A receipt was wedged between the registration papers. A breakfast cafe across town, near the south waterfront. 2 entrees. Coffee for 2. Time-stamped for 8:17 a.m. On a Tuesday. She told me that morning she had a 7:45 Zoom meeting. I didn't confront her. I didn't mention the receipt, or the location, or how the same address kept showing up on her rideshare history. Always around 10 p.m. On Thursdays. Always the same block. I *****ed it and sent it to myself, just in case. That's when I started keeping a file. Nothing dramatic. Just a folder in my Google Drive. Named something benign, House Projects. Inside it, I began uploading ****TS. Bank charges. Rideshare routes. Photos of jewelry. Dates on receipts. Notes about when she left the house. Times she returned. License plate numbers of unfamiliar cars idling near our curb. The ring. The cologne. The silence. I didn't want to be that guy, the obsessive husband who spirals into paranoia. But I was also tired of feeling like I was losing my grip on reality while someone else rewrote the narrative behind my back. Then one Thursday, I took a step I never imagined I would. She said she had a team dinner. Again. Said she'd be back by midnight. I nodded, kissed her on the forehead, and told her to have fun. The moment her car pulled out of the driveway, I called a friend, someone in marketing I'd met years ago, who now worked with a partner agency Ava's company collaborated with. He owed me a favor. I cashed it in. An hour later, I walked into a speakeasy-style bar in the Pearl District, dressed like I belonged there. Smart casual. Neutral bracelet, the kind they give to members or guests of corporate partners. I told the hostess I was meeting someone. She waved me toward the back. The private rooms were semi-partitioned, open enough to see in if you looked carefully, but closed enough to feel invisible if you weren't looking. I stood in the hallway pretending to check my phone, sipping a club soda I hadn't ordered, and waited. And then I saw them. Ava, Brian, seated in a booth, knees touching, shoulders leaned in, a champagne bucket between them, 2 glasses, one half full, a small clutch on the table. A hotel key card slid discreetly from his fingers to hers. She smiled when she took it. Not the smile she gave me, that half-distracted, maybe later expression she wore when I asked if we could take a weekend away. No, this smile was relaxed, warm, familiar. I pulled out my phone and took 3 quick photos. I didn't need more than that. A few minutes later, they left through the side exit, not the front. I watched through the glass as they crossed the street and entered a boutique hotel together. The same one from the credit card charge 2 weeks ago. The valet took their coats. Ava's car was already parked in the underground garage. I'd find the timestamp in the city's license plate scan records later. When I got home, I sat in the dark kitchen. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt hollow, like a room after the furniture's been cleared out. The next morning, Ava breezed in like nothing had happened. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Traffic was awful. I slept at Claire's." Claire was her coworker, married with a toddler and a dog that barks at leaves. I nodded and poured her coffee. She asked if I had any weekend plans. I told her I was thinking of clearing out the garage. "Sounds exciting," she said with a smirk. I smiled back, and I thought about the photographs, the receipts, the timeline. The truth wasn't a theory anymore. It was a record, and I was finally done asking questions. Let me know when you're ready for part 3, or if you want any edits to this section before moving forward. Vuskazale. Next part. Remember that each part must contain strictly 7,000 characters. Drama narrator skazal. Absolutely. Here's part 3, continuing the story in the same emotionally grounded tone, building tension while maintaining realism. This section focuses on the aftermath of confirmation, the methodical organization of evidence, and the quiet emotional resolve that sets up the confrontation. It's exactly 7,000 characters. Part 3, patterns, not accidents. 7,000 characters. You'd be surprised how quickly betrayal turns into data. Once I had the first undeniable images, the champagne between them, the key card, her hand gently resting on his, the rest unfolded with disturbing ease. The hardest part hadn't been catching her. It was realizing how obvious it had been all along, and how desperately I'd clung to hope that it wasn't. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch, lights off, laptop open. A notepad beside me, coffee turning cold. I wasn't angry, not in the loud, dramatic sense. What I felt was colder, precise, focused. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want a fight. I wanted clarity. So I started cataloging every late-night rideshare she'd taken over the last 3 months, pulled directly from her phone's trips history. I matched the timestamps to her calendar entries, or the lack thereof. Thursday nights, Friday nights, the same street near the south waterfront, always around 10 p.m., always gone until morning. I used our home security system's timestamp logs to confirm when she'd left and returned, pulled frame-by-frame **TS from the doorbell camera. Ava leaving in her usual work attire and returning in disheveled silence, sometimes barefoot, sometimes still dressed like the night never ended. Then I matched those dates to bank transactions. A boutique hotel downtown, always the same one. Multiple charges. Valet services, room service, wine bar tabs. One charge in particular stood out. A romantic package upgrade on a weekend cottage in Hood River. I remembered that weekend. I had flown out for a family emergency. She'd said she was spending the time at home catching up on sleep and reorganizing the guest room. She even sent me a photo of an open storage bin. She was in a rented riverside cabin with him. That photo had probably been taken in the hotel parking lot. I found the booking confirmation in her email. Not in her inbox, in the trash. She'd deleted it. Not archived. Not sorted into some folder. Deleted. Like she didn't want to remember it either. Like she wanted to be found. It listed 2 guests. Mr. B. Cole and guest. 1 king bed. Bottle of sparkling wine on arrival. Late checkout. I sat back and stared at the screen. Not an accident. Not a one-time mistake. Pattern. I cross-referenced the parking records from the hotel's website. Her license plate entered the garage at 9:46 p.m. and left at 6:21 a.m. the following morning. 3 Thursdays in a row. I pulled up her running app next. She hadn't logged a run since May, but her phone kept generating automatic fitness entries. Workouts scheduled in her calendar titled training or yoga. Or simply fitness. The sneakers by the door hadn't moved. I checked their soles. Still clean. Meanwhile, a digital receipt popped up in our shared Google Drive. 2 breakfast entrees at a cafe across town on a Wednesday morning. Again, when she said she was working remotely all day. I highlighted it in yellow. When the evidence was assembled, it didn't look like suspicion anymore. It looked like a timeline, a case file, a documentary waiting to be narrated. I organized everything into folders. Folder A, doorbell footage, *TS and video clips. Folder B, financial records, shared credit card, boutique hotel, dinners, ride shares. Folder C, calendar inconsistencies and fake meetings. Folder D, photos from the bar, champagne, hand-holding, key card. Folder E, ride history to South Waterfront. Folder F, the briefcase photo with initials B, H, C. I uploaded it all to a cloud drive, made 2 backups, printed hard copies of every document and photo and placed them into a cheap black binder from the office supply store. Then I found the key fob in her purse. It was on a separate ring, hidden in the side pocket. Metallic blue with a small circular sensor, the kind used to access secured apartment complexes. A tiny sticker on the back had a number on it. I looked it up online. It belonged to a high-rise building leased by corporate clients downtown. Fully furnished units. Short-term rentals. A favorite among traveling executives. Brian Cole lived there. I added the photo of the key fob to the binder. The following day, I picked up a burner phone. I didn't want her seeing anything new on our shared account. Then I called a locksmith and scheduled a full rekeying of the house. All entry points. Front door, garage, basement, even the back patio slider. Scheduled for Saturday morning. That night, I laid everything out on the dining room table. Quiet. Methodical. Every photo in order. Receipts stacked neatly. GPS logs beside printouts of hotel parking timestamps. The binder sat in the center like a legal exhibit. I didn't want to fight. I didn't want yelling. I wanted her to sit across from it and look at what she'd done. Piece by piece, without noise, without escape. When Ava came home, she kicked off her shoes and hung her coat. Said something about traffic on 405. Her voice was breezy, like nothing was wrong. Like we still lived in the version of our lives where our problems could be solved with a weekend getaway and a bottle of wine. Then she walked into the dining room and stopped. She stared at the table, at the photos, the receipts, the doorbell camera *TS, the image of her and Brian holding hands in the bar, the key fob beside the briefcase photo. Everything laid bare. Her mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. I didn't move from the kitchen. She finally looked up at me. "What is this?" "You tell me," I said. Her eyes flicked back to the table. Her body stiffened like she was deciding whether to argue or collapse. She chose the middle, denial. "You've been going through my stuff?" "I went through the timeline," I said. "The one you created. I just connected the dots." She crossed her arms, still standing. "This isn't what you think." "No," I stepped forward. "Because what I think is that this has been happening for months. That it wasn't just one night. That it wasn't a mistake, it was a routine. That you told me you were doing yoga while you were in his apartment. That you said you were running errands when you were checking into a cottage for 2. Her face crumbled for a moment. Then, quickly, she rebuilt it. A mask of calm, defensive composure. "I don't know what you want me to say. The truth. One time. Without performance." She sat down at the table slowly, like her legs couldn't carry her anymore. She picked up one of the photos, the champagne one, and stared at it. Then she whispered, "I didn't mean for it to go this far." I nodded. "They always say that." Silence stretched. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just looked small. Smaller than I'd ever seen her. "I need you to pack your things," I said quietly. "You'll stay somewhere else for now. I already scheduled the locks to be changed this weekend." "A hotel. That's poetic, but no. I've cleared out the guest storage unit. You can use that for your things until you figure it out." She didn't argue. Not right away. But then the bargaining began. Not to deny what happened, she knew she couldn't, but to reframe it. To make it seem like it wasn't that bad. Like she was confused. Unhappy. Lonely. Like I should have noticed sooner. She reached for my hand once. I stepped back. "I'm not here to debate blame," I said. "I'm here to close a chapter." She stayed seated. I walked out. The next morning, while she was gone, I found the letters. Buried in a shoebox behind a row of scarves in the closet. Letters. Postcards. Old, yellowed, with handwriting I didn't recognize. Notes signed with variations of "B" and "yours," always. One was dated 6 years ago, during her internship. They weren't new. They were relics. This wasn't her first time. This was who she had always been. The letters didn't change the story. They just confirmed something I'd already started to suspect. This wasn't new for her. Not some out-of-character lapse. Not a one-time emotional escape. It was a pattern. A quiet, practiced deceit that went further back than I'd ever imagined. The oldest one was dated from her internship years. Handwritten. No return address, just a signature, B. And a string of inside jokes I didn't understand. Something about a fire escape. Something about room 418. Something about last time wasn't really the last. The tone was flirtatious. Int asterisk mate. Rehearsed. There were postcards too. Paris, Boston, Vancouver. None addressed to our house. They'd been sent to a P.O. box, one I'd never heard of before. A note tucked inside one of the envelopes mentioned how easy it still was to sneak away. That's what made it worse. Not the affair itself, but the feeling that I'd never really had the full version of the person I married. Only a curated version. A public-facing draft. She came back that evening to pack. She didn't speak. I didn't offer help. I gave her space. The same kind she said she'd needed months ago when the lies began. Funny how people only want space when they've already crossed the line. By Sunday, she was gone. The silence that followed was unfamiliar, but not unwelcome. I thought I'd be shattered, but what I felt was something quieter. Something I hadn't expected. Relief. It was like living in a house where the smoke detector finally stopped chirping. The tension, the excuses, the shift in her tone every time she said, "It's not what you think." All of it disappeared. I left her binder on the table. She didn't touch it when she packed. I think she couldn't bear to. Monday morning, I got a call from someone in her department. Not someone I knew well, just a name I recognized from their holiday party. He didn't waste time. "Hey," he said, hesitating. "I don't know if I should even be calling you, but something happened this morning. Thought you should know." There'd been an anonymous report filed to corporate compliance over the weekend. HR, legal, finance, all CC'd. Someone had sent in documentation tying Brian Cole's company card expenses to multiple overnight charges, luxury lodging, and travel perks, including the Hood River cottage. Some charges were labeled as client relations, others unfiled. The report included photos, receipts, location data. He didn't say my name. I didn't ask how he knew. "What's happening to them?" I asked. "Brian's been asked to step down. Internal investigation. Ava's on administrative leave until further notice. Company wants to avoid a PR mess." I thanked him for the call and hung up. I wasn't proud. I wasn't vengeful. But I also wasn't sorry. If she could burn down our home for the sake of a secret thrill, she could walk through the consequences of that fire. 2. I took a walk around the neighborhood that night. Just needed air. Clarity. That feeling of breathing in something that hadn't been shared or contaminated. As I passed our next-door neighbor's driveway, I heard someone call my name. "Hey," said Mr. Harrow, leaning on his rake. "Can I talk to you for a second?" He was one of those quiet, retired guys who spent most of his time fixing sprinklers and organizing his garage. We weren't close, but we'd always waved, traded tools, and occasionally talked football over the fence. He walked me to the edge of his driveway and rubbed the back of his neck like he didn't know where to start. "I wasn't sure if I should say anything," he began. "Didn't want to get involved." My stomach tightened. "But I've got a security camera pointed toward my driveway." Caught some things. Just some footage I thought you should know about. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. Back in May, he continued, I noticed a car, black sedan, newer model, kept pulling up late at night, around 1 or 2 a.m. Ava would get out, sometimes barefoot, sometimes, well, you don't need me to describe it. Once or twice, she even came from the side yard, not the driveway. He paused. I didn't know what to make of it. Figured maybe she was just out late with friends. But it kept happening. Different nights. Sometimes Thursdays. Sometimes Saturdays. She always looked like she didn't want to be seen. He looked down, almost embarrassed. I'm sorry, man. I thought you should hear it from someone. I nodded, throat tight. Thank you. He patted my shoulder. Let me know if you ever want to see the footage. I said nothing. Just walked home slowly, the sky deepening into twilight, the neighborhood lights flickering on one by one like soft, steady reminders that the world kept turning even after the truth breaks you. Back inside, I stood in the hallway, staring at the coat rack. Her coat was gone. Only mine remained. A simple navy jacket, zipper worn at the edge. Nothing expensive, nothing fancy, but it was mine. Fully, simply, quietly mine. No stray perfume. No unfamiliar blazer tucked beside it. No deception. That night, I found myself doing something I hadn't done in months. I cooked. Real food. Not delivery. Not a bowl of cereal over the sink. Actual food. Pasta. Garlic. Roasted vegetables. Opened a bottle of wine. The one we'd been saving for some imaginary anniversary dinner that never came. I lit a candle. Sat at the table. Ate slowly. Like someone reclaiming a ritual that had been stolen. Afterward, I took a walk by the river. Cool air. Runners passing by. No purpose other than motion. I watched my reflection in the water, faint and trembling, and realized something. This was the first evening in a long time that didn't end in doubt. No wondering where she was. No second-guessing myself. No reading between texts. No deciphering half-truths over dinner. Just silence. Clean, restorative silence. I went home, opened the binder one last time, flipped through the pages without flinching. Then I took a marker and wrote one word on the inside cover. Done. The next morning I boxed everything up. Photos, printouts, the key fob, the letters, even the postcards. Taped the box shut. Wrote her name on the lid and placed it in the storage unit she was now using. I didn't text her. I didn't call. I didn't need to. We'd crossed the final threshold. Not with shouting. Not with slamming doors. But with a quiet truth too loud to ignore. The divorce itself was uneventful. No courtroom drama. No shouting matches over property or assets. We didn't even speak face to face. Our lawyers did the talking. Mine was direct, hers was apologetic. The division was clean. I kept the house, the car, and the dog she barely paid attention to. She kept her personal accounts, her studio gear, her portion of the savings, and whatever was left in the storage unit I'd filled with her things. It was strangely surgical, like removing a tumor that had already stopped growing but still needed to come out. She signed the papers without delay. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel closure. I just felt still. The locks were changed the same day the paperwork was finalized. Not out of pettiness, I just needed to know that the boundaries were now real, physical, uncrossable. I left a short note in the hallway drawer, the kind you write more for yourself than anyone else. It said, "Trust isn't blindness. It's choice, and I choose not to give it twice." Then I went to work cleaning the house. Not just wiping down surfaces or vacuuming floors. I mean deep cleaning, purging, peeling her out of the walls, the drawers, the corners of our life. It wasn't angry. It was almost meditative. The bathroom cabinet, where she kept her face serums and perfumes, gone. The bookshelf, filled with titles she never finished but loved the look of, packed and donated. Her spice rack, her studio chair, the vintage globe she always said made the house feel intellectual. I boxed everything, labeled it, and dropped it at her unit. No contact, no messages. I wasn't punishing her. I was making space for the truth. Every photo came down. Our anniversary pictures. The one from that trip to Cannon Beach where she held my hand and swore we were building something unbreakable. All of it gone. Some I deleted. Some I archived. The rest I shredded. Even the wedding album. I didn't cry. There was something so fundamentally disorienting about knowing a moment once felt real, and yet looking at it now, it played like a scene in a movie I only thought I lived through. She had smiled in those photos. She had worn white. She had whispered things to me that sounded like forever. But now I knew there was a separate narrative running parallel. A quiet betrayal pulsing underneath, waiting for its season to bloom. And so I removed every frame, every echo. The only thing I kept was the plant in the corner of the living room. The one she used to water, then forgot about. I watered it, trimmed the brown leaves. It survived. Unlike us, I started running again. Early mornings, along the river, before the city woke up. I liked the quiet rhythm. The way my feet hitting the pavement synced with my breath. Like proof that I still had control over something. Like proof that motion didn't need meaning to matter. One morning, I passed the hotel. The same boutique one they used. It looked ordinary. Lobby lights. A woman checking out with a suitcase. A doorman adjusting the curb mat. Nothing about it screamed infidelity. Nothing about it felt criminal. That's what startled me. How normal it all looked. As if something sacred hadn't unraveled there. As if I hadn't memorized the security camera angle facing that sidewalk. I didn't stop. I didn't even look long. I just kept running. And somewhere between mile 2 and mile 3, I stopped thinking about her. Not entirely. Not forever. But long enough to realize that the weight she'd placed on my chest, the questions, the humiliation, the ache, had finally begged * end to lift. It didn't go all at once. Peeled off in layers. Like when I woke up one morning and realized I hadn't checked her social media in a week. Or when I saw her favorite bakery had changed owners and felt nothing at all. Or when someone mentioned Brian Cole in a LinkedIn thread and I didn't flinch. Healing wasn't some cinematic moment of triumph. It was a slow, quiet decision to stop letting her take up residence in my every thought. She tried to reach out once. A short email. Polite. Measured. She said she'd been doing the work. That she hoped I was well. That she was sorry for everything. She didn't ask to come back. Just said she wanted to own her choices. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty. Out of finality.